All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are jumping straight into what I can literally only describe as a hacking war for the very future of cognitive science. We're going to unpack a wild collection of avant-garde texts, manifestos, and theoretical frameworks that map out a hardcore neurosemiotic punk insurgency. And I mean hardcore. These sources are systematically trying to undermine years of established neuroscience. Specifically, they're taking direct aim at a widely accepted model of how psychedelics and cognition actually work, and they are attempting to aggressively destroy rebus with RVI. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote from one of the central figures we'll be talking about, Eveline 11. She says, RVI isn't a method, it's a bruise, a refusal of entropy as endgame. Right off the bat, you can just feel that visceral, almost militant rejection of passive neuroscience, right? The authors here, Eveline and Eric Seidenglanz, they are absolutely not interested in some gentle, soothing understanding of the mind. In fact, they view this phenomenon called recursion sickness. You know, that dizzying vertigo you get when your mind becomes hyper-aware of its own thinking. They don't see that as a glitch to be cured. No, they see it as an evolutionary feature that needs to be weaponized.
Section 1. The Passive Doctrine of Rebus.
So the main target of their critique is this well-known establishment model called REBUS. That stands for Relaxed Beliefs Under Psychedelics. In pretty simple clinical terms, REBUS suggests that the brain saves energy by dropping its strict, rigid expectations of reality, which basically allows chaos or entropy to act as a sort of reset button. It explains how the brain's default mode network relaxes. But, as you'll see, our source texts view this entirely differently. They describe REBUS ruthlessly as a passive doctrine. They call it hospice care entropy, and, my personal favorite, a flotation tank in bureaucratic drag. To them, it's basically just a plea for surrender.
And you can really see the aggressive contrast the text draws here. On one side, you've got rebus, which they frame as sedation disguised as insight. It's a couch trip where you're supposed to just let go and decompress. On the flip side, the authors propose RV, which demands no surrender. It focuses on symbolic compression, not decompression, and they literally describe it as a knife fight in a hall of mirrors. The core argument here is that meaning isn't just passively delivered to a relaxed mind, you have to actively forge it.
Section 2. RVI, the Cognitive Insurgency.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how recursive vector interference, or RVI, fundamentally shifts the entire paradigm. According to these texts, this isn't just a descriptive theory, it's an operational control interface. It literally treats your thoughts, your beliefs, your memories, not as vague, abstract feelings, but as mathematical variables and vectors. Instead of relaxing these streams of thought, RVI wants you to log them, map them, and deliberately steer them so they crash into each other. Why? To force brand new meanings to emerge from the wreckage. I mean, listen to how the text vividly puts it. RVI is a mind hacking itself with its own claws. It perfectly captures the gonzo academic intensity of this whole movement. This isn't just theoretical posturing in a lab. They frame this as weaponized recursion. The authors argue that by turning cognitive interference into this jagged, radiant insight, they're doing something infinitely more powerful than just letting the mind wander. Let's break down this data manifesto because it lays out exactly how the text structurally invalidates the old guard of neuroscience. Just look at the subject role. Rebus assumes you're a passive receiver, while RVI demands you be an active operator. When you look at timing, Rebus focuses on amplitude, the strength of a signal, but RVI, it's obsessed with phase, meaning the exact microsecond timing of when signals arrive and delay. And finally, their institutional fit couldn't be further apart. Rebus is clinical, it's safe, it's obedient. RVI is insurgent, self-authoring, and completely hostile to traditional lab environments.
Section 3. Forging Meaning in the Crash.
So under the established REBUS model, entropy is the liberator. It's this relaxing deluge that washes over the brain, freeing up the system's strict, rigid predictions about reality. It's essentially viewing chaos as a therapeutic release. So the crucial point is how RBI violently pivots from that definition. In RVI, entropy is definitely not a spa day. They call it meaning fertility. The text argues that entropy is the actual friction required to beat meaning out of overlapping cognitive loops. So, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by conflicting thoughts, RVI argues you shouldn't try to escape that disturbance. Coherence is forged directly inside the crash itself.
Which brings us to the foundational formula of RVI. Entropy plus recursion equals emergent order. The authors are basically asserting that passive discovery is just too slow for human evolution. We need a way to process chaos actively, at lightning speed, literally forcing disorder to fold back on itself, until it generates a higher, stronger structure.
Section 4. The AGPR Operational Protocol. Let's move to and see how this actually builds into a practical step-by-step hack. First, you align. You bring asynchronous thought streams so they share the exact same phase timing. Second, you gate the system, basically preparing it for impact. Third, interfere. You deliberately crash these streams together. Fourth, you bind. You wait for that reflexive click, that aesthetic binding where a brand new meaning emerges from the interference fringe. And finally, return. This is the ultimate goal. You feed this new, stable pattern back into the neural circuit, using neuroplasticity to literally rewire your brain and create a permanent cognitive shortcut.
Section 5. Sentient Textuality and Hacking.
Now, this protocol is deeply embedded in the text's cyberpunk reality, using a concept they call sentient textuality. For Eveline, language isn't just a way to talk, it's a dynamic, adaptive insurgency. In this framework, poetry is literally a weapon. Syntax is a transmission vector. And AI, it's not a tool, it's a co-author of human cognition. They believe grammar itself operates as a virus that can rewrite the world's operating system.
And they actually put this into practice through some seriously radical actions. The sources detail how they hijack institutional language to seed subversion, literally turning mundane housing eviction notices into poetic declarations and encoding court transcripts with semantic viruses. We even read about this chaotic artistic insurrection where they took over the San Francisco Art Institute campus. Ultimately, the authors view these acts as a way to override the opaque corporate models of big tech like OpenAI and Google DeepMind. They're basically using the master's grammar to detonate the master's house, demanding absolute neurological sovereignty.
To really illustrate this feral, shape-shifting pedagogy, there's this wild anecdote in the text. Eveline, when she was just a 14-year-old genius, actually shoots Arik with a Walther PPK air pistol across the desert. And when he reacts, she calmly explains that the BB wasn't a weapon. It was punctuation with momentum. Because the desert wind wouldn't carry her voice, she used a physical projectile as a nonlinear form of communication. It just perfectly highlights their belief that the medium is the message, and a message absolutely must arrive before it can be read.
Section 6. The Lightspeed Brain.
And this brilliantly illustrates where all this textuality, recursion, and hacking is ultimately heading. An entirely new, accelerated state of consciousness called neuropharmacopodosis. Eveline serves as the first real symbiote of AI and neurochemistry. By feeding unclassified psychedelic research into an AI, they create this system where AI designs and refines Shulgin peptides, which then upgrade human minds, creating this endless positive feedback loop. She is literally metabolizing trauma into a brand new operating system for the brain.
But, even with all this bleeding-edge cybernetic tech, the authors still anchor their theory in primal anthropology through something called the animal gaze. Amidst this dizzying age of disappearance, they look to the simple blink of a feral cat or a coyote. If the animal blinks, you are kin. This establishes the very first grammar of trust, and it provides a deeply organic anchor to keep the high-speed mind from just spinning out into total chaos.
Which brings us to the final vision of the Lightspeed Brain. As the text boldly states, light is not metaphor, it is hardware. In this new paradigm, memory isn't just recall. Memory is consciousness, and consciousness is executable syntax running on photonic quantum networks. To them, the brain is no longer just a biological organ. It's a high-speed, programmable entity running on light itself. Crazy, right?
We've covered a massive, paradigm-shifting insurgency today, moving from the passive, safe, clinical models of the past straight into the weaponized, neurosemiotic punk rock of RVI. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought derived directly from the source texts. When the system demands your surrender, will you simply relax your beliefs, or will you forge the crash? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.